You and I have talked extensively about our favorite types, and we've both
Mhm.
kind of said that we really love dominant NE types. We love that extroverted intuition.
Right.
And I think you said it, and I just loved how you put it, but you said that NE expands us horizontally
Right. Yeah.
and
And
NI expands us vertically, which I just love that. I thought that was a brilliant way to put it.
yeah. Yeah. I thought about that when I met my ENFP friend, and yeah, and just how our interactions were. It was very, very interesting. And I think when I told you that, I meant it as a sort of snub against them. But then I thought about it afterwards, and it's actually not a negative thing, because it came across in my mind as a negative thing because I'm saying they are unable to to make me expand vertically. But
Mm,
um, but I was thinking about it. If you want to build something very tall, you need a very broad foundation. And so that is kind of what they provide me. They're just so scattered in their interests and thoughts and everything. It forces me to expand in a
yeah.
different way, you know,
Hmm.
versus me versus me being inclined to just obsess over. I don't know. They just had this effect where I felt like I was expanding, but not necessarily going upward. I was just getting wider, and that was the
Hmm.
best. That was the best way I could put it into it. But you see, if you ask them that, they'll probably find it was very, they'll just rattle off whatever it is I was trying to say.
It's interesting because I don't think in interactions with them you have a choice. Like you're going to expand whether you like it or not.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and I
and
don't and it's not even work. Like, you know what I mean? Like when you're
mhm.
with them, you don't even feel like it's work. It's kind of like this magical thing that happens.
And I'm curious to know what it's like for you as because we've kind of spoken about this before, but I'm curious to know the difference between the ENTP for you and the ENFP for me, because for me, the ENFP is very, and we've spoken about this, as I said, they are
Hmm.
very messy. And I don't think, and I mean that in a good, and I mean that in a good way, but I don't
Yes.
think
Yeah.
you would describe the ENTP the same way. And
No.
but for me, and I think it's the extroverted intuition, the extroverted thinking. Thoughts they just spew out thoughts, and
Hmm.
there's not a lot of method to the ENFP's madness. And and I'm curious to know if that is the case for the ENTP with your experiences.
Well, I think first we should say, because obviously you and I have talked about this, between the
Hmm.
two of us, but um, we have basically said that my favorite NE Dom is the ENTP and yours is the
Right.
ENFP. And it's not like I don't appreciate ENFPs because I do. But if I had to pick my favorite NE Dom, it's hands down the
Hmm.
ENTP. That would be my choice every time. And you kind of said it's for you, it's the ENFP.
ENFP. Right.
Hmm. And
Yeah.
so I would agree with you as far as like most of the stuff you said. Is it messy? I don't know that for ENTP that I would say it's messy so much as I feel like it's just that they're firing like a gun at me. It's constant
Hmm.
like ideas, this. I don't know. It's very hard to put this into words, but it's just like there's so much coming at me. It's like, what do I grab at first? It's just exciting because it's a way that I can't think, or I'm not that quick in my thinking. And they're
Yeah.
constantly pelting me with stuff. And it's like I barely can catch one ball before they're throwing another at me. And I want to take each one and like explore it in every way that I can. And then I barely have time to do that before the next ball is getting thrown at me.
Right.
And
Exactly.
yeah, and I know that's probably a similar thing that we would both say about the two types. But I
Yeah.
think for me, what I value, I guess, is the ENTP, and this is where I think it comes down to just male and female differences between you and I. I
Hmm.
really, in my life, I tend to seek, for my very close relationships, I tend to seek thinkers. And
Right.
I think it's because as a female, I value that. Like in my, my everyday life, like I can find any number of like feeler female type people. And,
Hmm.
they give me something beautiful in a relationship, but it's kind of like to really expand my mind in the way that I want to. I look for those thinker types, intuitive thinker types, because they really help to sharpen me in my thinking. And that's kind of
Right.
what I want, especially as I get older. I desire that more and more. It's like I've been comfortable in my feeling side, I guess, for lack of a better word, all my life. But
Yeah.
as I get older, I just want to get to be a stronger thinker. And
Right.
I think for you, you might have the advantage over me being male. And I know this is probably not going to be met well with people who listen, but I would say as a female, I am more agreeable by nature. What do you have to say about that? So for you, it's a little different.
Hmm.
You're not looking for that thinking component as much.
Right. Yeah, and again, we've spoken about this before, but for me, it's almost been the opposite. And I've heard people describe INFJs as very warm and welcoming, and
Yes. Yeah.
I've heard people describe them that like that, and I found when I was growing up that that couldn't have been an accurate description of me. I definitely think I was more. Uh, I mean, I don't want to say I was cold or anything, but
Hmm.
there was an absence of feeling.
Yeah.
I thought myself to be very logical and just very, I don't know, just very neutral as far as emotion was concerned. And
Hmm.
it's only now in my later years that I've softened up a bit. And so just to get back to your point, you said that you appreciate thinkers. I think that is part of the reason why I appreciate the
Hmm.
feeler version of the extroverted intuition, because they have that softer touch that I need or that I crave or that I want. And so that's one aspect. And then just being a male, you tend to want that softening effect from a female.
Mm.
Um, so I think that is what I would add. I think that is why the ENFP just kind of does it for me. And I
Hmm.
think I would enjoy the ENTP probably just, I don't know if it's just as much, but I would definitely enjoy them as well.
Right.
But the ENFP just, they just kind of steal my heart, I guess.
And it's funny because I think that it's not that you're looking to. I mean, I don't. The words strengths and weaknesses kind of are problematic for me. So it's not like I wouldn't say that my weakness is thinking. It's just that it needs to be developed. It needs to be sharpened. Whereas it could
Hmm.
be the same for you. So it's not that I'm looking for someone to complete or to fill in the gaps of my weaknesses as much as I'm looking for someone to help me strengthen
Hmm.
parts of me that need to be strengthened. So, I don't,
Yeah.
would you agree with that?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I would definitely agree. And I would also add that, and I don't know how popular this would be, but in my culture or whatever,
Hmm.
I assume it's everywhere. But a male is supposed to embody certain virtues, right?
Hmm.
Uh, some of the more stronger virtues. From a male perspective, I've always tried to suppress emotion, and so
Mm.
when I interact with people, or not so much suppress it, but just value reason or logic above it. Uh, and so when I have close friendships, it's always interesting to me to just see how the whole feeling versus thinker dynamic works.
Hmm.
And and so I felt like growing up, I needed softening. I don't know if I would call it a weakness, but I felt like I needed like a softer touch, because if I met someone and they were just as I don't know what word you want to use, just as bad as I am, then we would just we would just be a force for I don't know, it'd just be terrible. So for me, it's more about like balance, and um
Mm.
I think
Yes.
we as INFJs, we crave balance and everything. So whatever we are, we want someone to kind of complete, to balance us.
Hmm.
Um, so for you think a thinker would balance you, And I think for me, a feeler is what will tip my scales just right.
Now, were you aware of this? Like when you were a little kid, did you feel like you were, or did you think you were cold or,
Hmm. Yeah, I definitely thought that I, yeah, I viewed myself as cold and detached. I don't necessarily think everyone would have viewed me that way. Some
right,
would say it more than others, but I definitely felt detached from everyone. Like even my friends, like I would enjoy their company and whatever, but I always felt detached. And if something happened, I wasn't necessarily going to feel a lot of emotion attached to it.
mm.
Um, and that was something that in fact that was something that even troubled me. Like I used to wonder if is something wrong. Is something
Yes.
like I honestly remember thinking, is something wrong with me because I don't
Mm.
get worked up when things happen, or I just never had that type of emotion. So when I listen to INFJ videos, I always used to, I could relate it on some level, but then I just remember like I didn't feel like that when I was younger.
Yes.
So yeah,
And then
but
my experience was the opposite.
hmm
So for me, I was like such a little drama queen, like I mean,
hmm
on purpose sometimes. Like I remember, and I think I've said this before in one of my videos, but like I would watch people on like TV shows or movies and I would try to act like them in ways that didn't fit me, like
right,
it's kind of
yeah,
embarrassing now to look back and see how I was such like a little just trying on different feelings. And of course I wore my heart on my sleeve. I cried openly. I didn't try to hide like my emotions in that way at all. um,
hmm
but it's funny. See, again, unlike you, I didn't necessarily think about it. It just was. But there was a
yeah,
part of me that I knew wasn't this person that I was portraying. Like I knew there was more to me. I just wasn't sure how to get to that person I wanted to be. I didn't have
right,
words for this stuff. It was all just in my head. But I just remember listening to people have these kind of, I don't know, for lack of a better word, like intellectual conversations. And I was very curious about it. And I was interested and it stimulated me in a very kind of unique way, I guess.
right, right, and so I think that kind of shows the difference between the whole
Yes.
male versus female thing
Yeah.
because we had almost the exact opposite in
Hmm.
experiences, right? And just to get back to something that I was saying, so I said that when I was young I was detached, right? And I think that is how I would describe it. But there would be moments where something would actually touch touch my heart, or something would affect me, and I would feel very, very strongly about it. Like I would feel
Okay.
a lot of emotion attached to it.
Hmm.
But that was always internal. It wasn't something that
Ah,
I it wasn't
so you weren't
something that I
comfortable
expressed.
put it. Okay.
Yeah, that wasn't something that I would put out or show. You said just now that you cried publicly. I don't think anyone has ever seen me cry like
Even
publicly
to
at
this
all.
day, huh?
Yeah, even to this day, so I feel like I've been detached, and then I'm still a bit detached. But then when there are things that could happen that would move me, and then in those situations, I definitely have this inner depth of feeling, or whatever. There was one thing I wanted to ask you, or just to run by you, that I didn't get a chance to before. You said that in one of your last videos, you said that the INFJ kind of starts off life as an adult, right? You remember saying
Yes.
that,
Yeah.
right? And one thing, there are two things I want to say about that. I definitely agree with it. But wouldn't you say it's interesting because we start off life as adults, but then you would also say that we show up late to the party, and those
Yes.
two and and those two thoughts are a bit contradictory, because if we start off as an adult, it means that we're a bit advanced or ahead of our time,
Right, right,
right?
right.
But then we arrive later on in life, and I've definitely seen that with me. Like I've felt as if I was a bit older than my age growing up. But then as everyone grew up, like that gap shrank dramatically. And I just saw that while I was ahead in some instances, I was far behind in other instances.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just found it interesting that we could start off as adults and still be late to the party. It's like it's almost like what's the point of starting off as adults
Right,
if we
right.
if we're just as late if we're later than everyone else.
It's
So I don't know
true.
if
Yeah.
so I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
Well, I mean, I know when I was young, like I said, I ask very deep questions that you wouldn't expect a child to ask. And I know when I was
Hmm.
very young, I had again, for lack of a better word, I had very deep thoughts, and no one really could answer a lot of my questions, you know? And I think
Hmm.
for me, I took so many of my cues from who was around me. And so
Right.
even though I started off in this sort of more adult state, it didn't take long for me to feel that that wasn't correct or appropriate. And so I think it's like that's kind of probably when I started trying to squash that part of me in a way. Like I don't know that I did that consciously, but it was just, from the responses I was getting around me when I was trying to be that little adult self. And I remember
Right.
telling people that I can do this or I can think like this or whatever. And they would be like, no, you're just a kid. Cause I was met with that a lot in my family that,
Right.
and I don't know that in my family, children were valued as true people. Like it was almost like they were just little I don't know how to explain it, but I know we
Yeah.
weren't we weren't really seen as like thinking and feeling, kind of
Right.
individuals. And I think
Hmm.
we were kind of put down a little bit. Like you're just a child. You won't understand this because you're not at that place yet. And I remember getting very resentful when I was told that. Like, no, I can understand. Tell me because I want to know. But after a while, I think I started to believe it, I guess, and then it's not like I didn't want the answers to these questions, but I don't know. I thought, well, maybe I need to pursue a different path as far as who I am or who I think I am. I think it's very confusing for a child like us to be
Yeah.
treated in that way because, we don't have the tools at that time of life to really reflect on who we really are. We get that from other people.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, it's so interesting because on my side of things, it's that my childhood was very different. I think I think my parents viewed me as very strange, but they were impressed by my
Ah,
strangeness.
uh-huh.
So 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 from a young age, I knew that how I thought about things was different, but thinking about things differently, I didn't get the impression that it was a bad thing, you know?
Mm.
So maybe that encouraged my weirdness to flourish. But but I never felt growing up that how I was wrong, you know.
Right.
I didn't necessarily feel understood, but I didn't feel as if my way of thinking was wrong, or that it should have been something to curb or control. So I guess that was one good thing.
Mm.
It kind of encouraged me to just be strange, and
Hmm.
try and figure out life as it comes. So
But
I
on the
definitely.
other, but on the other hand, though, you did
Hmm.
say that your culture affected you as a male, because
Yeah.
even though you're within your family unit, they accepted you for who you were. As a
Hmm.
culture, you were being shown that, and then this is what you, I guess, maybe reflected that as a male that you had to be. I don't know. You could
Yeah.
talk more about that, but
Yeah. And so that's a good point. And I don't know how much direct influence each of those things had on each other, but as a male, you should be strong in your thoughts, or you should have confidence in whatever you are. That's a general image that I had growing up. So there was a sense of me sticking my guns to whatever my thoughts were, you know,
right.
and
Mhm.
and not necessarily submitting to whatever other people thought.
And I think that kind of goes to our stubbornness,
Yeah, yeah,
because obviously you felt more comfortable doing that as a male, Whereas, see,
Hmm.
again, and I go back to being female, I was definitely more of a people pleaser in that way. Like, okay, I have definitely had strong thoughts about things, but I wasn't willing to share them necessarily for several reasons. And I would have to say, even though I do say this a lot of the times that I wouldn't share my thoughts is because they wouldn't come out the way that I wanted them to. But if I have to be completely honest, a lot of times the thoughts wouldn't come out because I was worried what other people would think. So it was more from like this people pleasing kind of um,
Hmm.
standpoint, like I just wanted to be agreeable or agree with people. And I think that kind of ties into, just sort of who I am, as a woman. Like, let's not rock the boat. Let's not
Yeah.
cause any kind of controversy. Let's just keep the peace here.
Yeah. Yeah. So what you're saying is that is how it looked on the female side. But for me,
Right.
I definitely, for me, it's more about the backlash isn't worth it. It's not so much that I'm trying to please,
Ah,
but it's that the effect of my words, it isn't like sometimes I just don't feel like going through it. So I would withhold my thoughts for the sake of peace, but it's not so much that I'm trying to please
not
them.
for the
It's
same
just
reasons, right?
yeah, it's just
That's interesting.
I'm not in the mood to go through what my thoughts would mean, you know?
Yes.
But it's not necessarily that I want to please them. I think our type has a tendency to lean towards pleasing people, but I have noticed that for me, it's not so much about pleasing them as it is about not having the stress of conflict. You know,
Mm,
I don't, but it's yeah, I'm not. I don't think I actively think very often about people's feelings
hmm.
being hurt or stuff like that.
Yeah,
I
and
don't
that
know. I'm
was
trying
the
to
one of
think.
the things I know when as we got to have gotten to know one another, that I really admired about you because I know I could tell that you're very just direct, and
Hmm.
if you really want to say it, you're going to say it. And I've found that very admirable because I still struggle with this. I really do. Um,
Yeah.
it's difficult for me, and it's something that I'm still actively working on and probably will be for a long
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. But I mean, it has its consequences. You know,
Yes, I'm sure.
it it has lots of consequences, and I often marvel. Like some of my friends, I wonder why they still speak to me, uh, because I'm very direct. But I think I'm direct in a very I don't know. I was gonna say I'm very direct in a warm way, but in the moment, I don't think um I don't know. I'm trying to figure out what it is because a friend of mine actually told me they had some they had a problem that was going on between them and someone else, and I was telling them what they should say. And what I told them to say was something that came across a bit harsh. And their
Mm.
response to me was that I could get away with saying something like that, but they couldn't. You know, so I don't know if my directness is tapered by my FE, but I, but
Yes.
but I am very direct, but I don't necessarily think it's as abrasive as when the INTJ, for example, might say the same thing,
Right. Right.
you know? So
Yes.
so I try to use I try to use those things to my advantage.
So when you're communicating with someone and you want to say something that's more direct, are you consciously kind of contemplating how it comes out?
Yeah. It depends on my relationship with the person.
Mm,
So
okay.
if I know them fairly well, then I don't think as much about it. If if I don't necessarily have a relationship with them, then I think about how I would come across. But at no point in time is it my thinking to not say what I want to say. As far as, you know, like I
Hmm.
will be direct. I just how direct I want to be maybe may change.
And isn't that funny? Because like for, I don't know, for me, you think about like in your closest relationships, for me, the best relationships are when I don't have to care necessarily about
Hmm.
hurting the other person's feelings, which is kind of funny, right? Because you think
Yeah,
the person that you love the most, you should be the most careful
yeah,
with. But I think it's the
yeah,
opposite with me. I find
yeah,
such freedom in being able to say whatever I want to say and they're not offended because they
yeah,
understand where it's coming from.
yeah, exactly, exactly. And I feel the same way. the most meaningful relationships I have are the ones where I don't have to worry about offending them. Like I can just say whatever I want to say, and
Yes.
it's taken for what for what I mean versus what the actual words are.
Yes, because the other
And
person knows you and they know it's coming from a place of love.
yeah,
And it's nice not having to tiptoe around people like we would do in our interactions with, people we don't know as well.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
Hmm.
And so we were talking about our love for the ENFPs, the A and TPs, but I've even found that is what I've enjoyed with our friendship, just being able to interact with another INFJ.
Yes.
Uh, it's it's been striking how much, because I mean, if we think about it, we have so many differences between you and I, you know,
Hmm.
so many different things, but then we think about matters in the same way. And I think that the fact that we have so many differences, but then we are so alike in how we deal with circumstances just shows how the whole type thing works.
Hmm.
And and I've related many different stories to you, and you always say that like your responses show that you get exactly what I was trying to say.
Yes.
And and if I explain the same stories to someone else, they view the matter entirely differently. And it's been extremely refreshing to not
Yeah.
have to hold back in that way.
Well, you and we always tease that we share a brain because it feels
Yeah,
like we do. But what I
yeah.
find amazing about it is that, okay, so obviously I have an INTJ loved one. And
Mhm.
when I speak to him, because of the shared NI, like even
Mhm.
if I'm not quite developed in my thoughts, like he can sort of piece together what I'm trying to say.
Right.
But even saying that, there are times that he can't, like he struggles. Like he'll just say, I don't understand what you're trying to say. And then I don't want to say it's that I get frustrated, but it is a bit. And then I realize, okay, I need to develop this more before we talk about it further. Or he'll want me to just keep trying, and which point he's trying to figure it out. And then it just kind of like, I don't know. It's just a little bit of a difficulty. But with you, I know I've said things to you before, and you've done the same. When I feel like it is a mess, like I think,
Yeah.
what did I just say? But miraculously, every single time, you know
Mhm.
exactly what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Like exactly.
Yeah. No, and that precisely is the beauty of it. No, I don't know if I would get that same experience from every INFJ. I still assume that would be the relative experience. But
Mhm.
um, but I have, and so the scenario that you just gave, you said that you said a bunch of things, and I understood. What I find even more impressive is the things that you don't say. That's what we pick up on.
Yes.
So
Yes.
you don't even need to explain the differences, and you don't even need to explain all of the context of the situation.
Yeah.
Just the small little bits, and
Yeah, it's like we
and
lead each other
mhm.
to the next, we kind of like subconsciously lead each other to the next place or whatever.
Yeah, yeah,
It's like
yeah,
we follow each other's train of thought so much that we can kind of guide each other to the next,
hmm
goalpost or whatever.
yeah, and we guide each other's thoughts so well that we can
Hmm.
see the next thought, the next thought or the next idea before it comes.
Hmm.
And I think that's what's very interesting, because so sometimes we would be discussing something, and I would be talking about the sky, and before I finish whatever my thought was, you would anticipate the remainder of the sentence, like you would
Yes.
you'd already know where it was going, because of how I led up to that point.
Uh-huh.
And that's what is very interesting to me, the ability to just know where we are going because of the path that we took to reach, that present part of the conversation.
Yes. And I
Yeah.
think this is important to talk about. So I'm going to bring this up. But I think the reason that it works so well between us and that it might not between two other INFJs is because we are both self-aware people.
Mm.
And I don't think that if you have an INFJ who's self-aware and one who isn't, or if you have two INFJs that are not self-aware, I don't think it's going to work very well. I think
Yeah.
are going to be a lot of problems because there's that lack of like of honesty and like and it's maybe it's not like intended on purpose because we all kind of have our stages of growth, but I think you and I are so aware of our own processes um, that we kind of have this respect for each other as far as like even dealing with one another. So this is something I've noticed, and I haven't told you this before, but we both recognize the fact that we are very stubborn individuals when it comes to thinking. Like, I don't appreciate someone telling me how to think, and neither do you.
Hmm.
Like,
Exactly.
we want to come to our own conclusions and beliefs about things. We want to develop it on our own. And you and I, we know that about each other because we understand ourselves. So when we both have a problem in our lives, we consult one another for advice, but we don't press
Hmm.
beyond that. Like
Yeah.
you will give me advice, I will give you advice, but then we don't check up. Like, did you take my advice? How are you doing
Hmm.
now? We don't do
Yeah.
that because we know that that will not end well. We wouldn't
Hmm.
appreciate that because I know you have to come to your own conclusions about it. And I'm not going to necessarily influence you. It's not like you don't appreciate my advice. I know you do. Um,
Hmm.
I think we have intuitively figured that out about each other. And I think that's one of the reasons that this works so beautifully.
No, and that's true, and it's so much so that we don't actually think of it as you giving me advice or me giving you advice.
Yes.
It's more just me throwing out my thoughts, and you can do what
It,
you want with it whenever you feel like it.
yes. And
You
you've
know?
always done that with me. You have
Hmm.
thrown your thoughts out to me. And I know that it's because you really care about me, but you're not going to hammer it home. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
You're just going to
yeah.
say, here it is, consider this, think about these things. And then
Hmm.
I really do take them to heart, but I just appreciate that you let me come to it on my own in my own time. It might take years, like,
Yeah.
but you know that about me because you know that about yourself. And I think that's
Hmm.
one of the reasons this works because I can imagine two INFJs who are not very self-aware and don't know themselves are going to beat
Yeah,
each other with that hammer.
exactly. Yeah, for sure. And this is actually one of the reasons why I don't like to talk to some people about my FCUs, because I know that what they're going to tell me, they would want to either see it, uh, they would want to see the effect of their words very quickly, or
Yes.
they would almost demand that I do things however they have shared,
Hmm.
and that by itself gets me very upset. Like that
Yeah.
annoys me
Right.
greatly,
That makes you
and
not want to talk to the other
e-
person about your
e-
problems.
exactly, and so with you, I've definitely seen, just how we have done that. And what is also interesting, to tie this back all the way to the beginning, the ENFPs, I don't think that they would be inclined to tell you what to do either. I'm not sure about the ENTPs.
No, yes, I completely agree. Yes, go
Exactly.
ahead. You say your part first.
Right? In my experience, they would take my thoughts and, well, at least the NFP that I know, uh, they would just let you work out your process,
Hmm.
and they have no inclination whatsoever to pinpoint you to do one specific thing. They just sort of, at least, again, at least the ENFP that I'm thinking about, what they would do, they would just let me ramble through, and they would insert whatever they needed to insert at whatever time. But even in doing so, they have absolutely no intention of enforcing their thoughts on my thoughts. And it could just be because they don't even know what their thoughts are on it. But they just but they my point is that I've seen it with you, the INFJ in my life, and it's completely different. But the ENFP has also done that in their own way as well.
Yes. Yes, I completely agree as far as ENTP as well, because I mean, as you know, and I think I've shared this in some of my videos, but when I went through that horrible tragedy in my life, an ENTP really was kind of walked with me through the whole thing. And it was the same exact thing that you said. There was no um, things that were said to me that were extremely helpful, but there was no, have you done this or have you thought about this? It was just literally
Hmm.
like throwing out a thought here, a thought there, a thought here. And
Yeah.
it was just so helpful to me because I never felt pressure in it. Whereas from
Yeah.
other people in my life, I was getting pressure. Like, you shouldn't be, handling this way. You need to do X, Y, Z. You shouldn't withdraw. And that this person never did that to me. It was just
Yeah.
very much accepting whatever I threw out. It was okay. And then it was met with another, something in return to think about.
Exactly. Right. So based on what you're saying there, do you think we can safely assume that what we actually need is people to give us thoughts and allow us to put the pieces together versus
Yes.
someone trying to put the pieces together for us and then enforce it upon ourselves? So if I think of what we just spoke about as far as INFJ and INFJ,
Hmm.
me with the ENFPs, you with the ENTPs, it's almost as if they, in all those situations, they give small pieces of information and then they let go and let you do what you have to do. And what that does is that it creates, there's no guilt, there's no pressure, there's a type of
Right.
freedom.
Right.
And there's a freedom for you to go through your own process. And that's something that I love about ENFPs.
Yes.
There's a type of freedom uh, that they exude.
Hmm.
And I think that does as well, because we're so much in our heads that when they give us a type of freedom where we could relax a bit.
Yes.
And so yes, I just think
Because
that's something that I appreciate.
I think we get so weighed down by expectations, whether it's perceived
Hmm.
expectations that we think someone has of us or our own expectations that we place on ourselves. And I think they kind of
Yeah,
distance us from that. There's
yeah,
no expectations because the whole world is just like a playground. It's kind of like,
yeah,
why burden yourself with all these things
exactly.
when there's so much to
Hmm.
discover?
Yeah,
And and I think even in like hard situations in life, something as serious as grief, it's still like this is your playground. Like, you need to explore this in a way that fits for you, and you have the freedom to do that with that person. There's no pressure. So I just think across the board it just works so beautifully
yeah.
because they give us the freedom to be able to not work within a box, I guess.
Hmm. Right, and the contrary is also true. The types
Yes.
that remove the freedom from us, we have great problems with. We have great problems trying to interact with that.
Yes.
When we feel constrained, we
Yeah,
feel
it's
that pressure and we lash out.
Yeah, because
And
it's like being claustrophobic. It's like
yeah,
literally being put into a box and you just want to scratch and claw your way out of it?
yeah, yeah. And and I was thinking just back on that point where we said that we start off life as an adult. I
Mm.
think the ENFPs and the NEDOMs, I think even in general, they sort of bring out the child that is hidden
Yes.
behind all of that. And because even INFPs, ENFPs, uh, I think all of them, they have this childlike way about them,
Mm.
and we who are so adultish supposedly, they just bring us out of ourselves a bit, and
Hmm.
we appreciate that. At least
Yeah.
I appreciate that greatly.
Yes, I appreciate it too.
Yeah.
Definitely. I mean, any of the any intuitives, INTP, ENTP, ENFP, INFP, yes, they do. They kind of take us out of our seriousness and
Yeah.
allow us to just play. And I think it's the
Hmm.
play, is the ideas, play with ideas.
Yeah.
It's like they give us permission to do that. And that's exciting. Think, wow, I
Yeah.
could play with this idea.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's cool. It's really nice when you meet people that gives you that sense of fulfillment. Because I think as INFJs, we're always seeking some sort of fulfillment on, just this sense of contentment. They give you a sense of fulfillment whenever you're in their presence.
Hmm.
And yeah, that's something kind of rare
Yeah,
for us.
I agree.